We don't fall in love with other people but with hidden parts of ourselves. It all starts innocently. A glance across the room, a moment of laughter, an inexplicable closeness. I feel like I've known you my whole life, we say. But what if it's true in a deeper sense? What if we meet not another person, but a mirror? A reflection of our deepest longings and most carefully hidden truths. Carl Jung called this projection, the unconscious transference of inner content to the outer world. And nowhere is this manifested so strongly and dangerously as in love. The beloved becomes an archetype, a symbol, a screen. We don't see them. We see our soul missing what wears their face. A man projects his anima, his inner feminine, onto a woman. She becomes mystery, sensitivity, care, danger. She becomes his soul in material form. A woman projects her animus, his inner masculine, onto a man. He becomes strength, clarity, logic, vision. He becomes her voice in the darkness. But they don't see each other. They see what they need to see. And so the magic begins. It's intoxicating. It's frightening. And it's doomed, if the two of them don't wake up. At first it feels like a divine union. He completes me. She understands me. I've never felt so alive, but over time the projection begins to waver. She's no longer ethereal. She's demanding. He's no longer a rock. He's cold. Disappointment creeps in like a shadow at sunset. We say, "You've changed." But the truth is more painful. We've begun to see clearly. When the projection disappears, so does the fantasy. And now we are faced with the soul-defining question: can I love the real person behind the illusion? Can I stay even when they are no longer my dream? This is the threshold where many turn away. They chase the next projection, the next spark, the next mirror. But some, the brave ones, stay. And in that stay they enter the temple. For now love truly begins. Jung warned us, romantic love is never just about romance. It is the psyche's attempt to integrate what is missing. The beloved is the portal, but the destination is the self itself. The reason we're so drawn to certain people isn't random. It's archetypal, it's mythic. It's as if our soul recognizes a forgotten melody in them, and it says, "This is it. This is the one. This is where the work is." And that's why we're drawn to them. Not because they're perfect, but because they hold the key to our next transformation. Sometimes the anima or animus is light, a muse, a guide, a sanctuary. But often it appears as a storm. Toxic anima, cruel animus, relationships that begin in fire and end in ashes. And yet we stay. Why? Because pain, unlike comfort, awakens us. Those who break us often teach us the most. They show us the parts of us we have buried: our anger, our longing, our tenderness, our chaos. They bring it out of us, not because they are evil, but because the soul demands to be whole. Jung didn't see this as pathology. He saw it as initiation. Love from this perspective is not a happy ending. It is a descent into the underworld, a confrontation with the shadow, the dismantling of the ego, and through that, if we are ready, the emergence of something more real than fantasy. This is also supported by neuroscience. When we fall in love, our brains are flooded with dopamine, oxytocin, and norepinephrine, the parts of the brain responsible for critical thinking, especially the prefrontal cortex, shut down. In other words, we are neurologically programmed to hallucinate in the early stages of love. That's why everything they say feels profound, why every moment is magical. The brain is designed to deceive us, because the continuation of the species demands it. But eventually the chemicals wear off. The real work begins, and now we must choose to stay, not through fantasy, but through presence. This is where conscious love begins. To truly love someone is to love them beyond projection, beyond wounds, beyond unmet needs. It's sitting in front of another person and saying, "I see your shadow, and I choose you anyway." That kind of love is rare, but it is possible, not when we seek completion, but when we seek truth. Because the truth is this: no one can complete you. No one is the missing part of you. It's the myth of the half-soul, a beautiful story that keeps us from becoming whole on our own. The true path is this: first become whole. Integrate your anima, your animus, your shadow. Then love. Not from emptiness, but from overflow. Then love is not a need. It is a gift, not a prison. It is a dance. And when two people whole in themselves meet in this space, it's not passion, it's not fire, it's something quieter, deeper, it's home. It's not love that blinds, it's love that sees. But even such love will challenge us, because even when we know everything, the patterns, the symbols, the projections, we will still fall, we will still hurt, we will still suffer, because love is not a problem to be solved, it is a mystery to be surrendered to. And so the paradox continues, we are most attracted to those who reflect our unconscious, we are most hurt by those who show us ourselves, but we are also most healed by those same people, if we dare to face the truth, for behind every projection there is a gift, behind every collapse there is a rebirth, behind every ending there is a return, not to them, but to yourself. In the next chapter we will go further, we will explore the 4 stages of love outlined by Jung, from projection to power, and how true union is found, not in fusion, but in the sacred space between two beings. And in this space, everything becomes possible. We said that love is a mirror, but what happens when that mirror breaks? Projections fall, fantasy dissolves, we no longer see the sacred other, we see the imperfect human. And in this collapse, we receive the invitation of a lifetime, to love not because we see ourselves in another, but because we finally see them. Jung called this moment the withdrawal of projections, spiritual death, the end of enchantment, but not the end of love mice, the beginning of true love, because love has stages, and Jung, with the precision of a cartographer of the soul, named them. The first is eros, romantic attraction, magnetism, intoxication, fire. Eros is beautiful, it is divine, but it is also blind, it is driven by instincts, biology, the unconscious, it is a trance. But the second stage, projection, is where the myth begins. We don't just love, we give meaning. He becomes the father, she becomes the muse, they become symbols of salvation, and we believe that this person will fix what is broken, heal what is hidden, complete what is lost. But no one can hold the mask of God forever. The third stage is the one that is rarely talked about, disappointment, the phase when cracks appear, the loved one becomes just a human, they forget, they betray, they disappoint, and here we have to decide, shall we run away, to the next screening, to the next high, will we stay and enter the 4th stage, individualization within the union, the rarest and most transformative form of love. Two people who no longer see gods in each other, begin to see themselves. They speak not to control, but to understand. They see each other's wounds, they hold the contradictions, and they stay, not because it's easy, but because it's real. True love, Jung believed, begins only after a fall, after the anima retreats, after the animus takes a step back, after the soul stops projecting, and starts reflecting. This is not a fairy tale love, this is not a Hollywood kiss, this is not passion without pain, this is a quiet revolution of one's own self, caused by intimacy. At this stage the work begins, integration. We begin to see how childhood trauma has shaped our expectations, how the father or mother we couldn't reach became the partner we couldn't please, how our fear of abandonment isn't about them, it's about the lost child inside us. Love becomes a crucible, a mirror not of beauty, but of truth, and yet the soul yearns, because at the core of everything, the desire to love is the desire to be whole, to reclaim what has been lost in the unconscious, to reunite with the inner feminine, the inner masculine, the rejected child, the unrecognized artist, the silent mystic. That's why we fall so madly in love, because love is memory. We remember a part of ourselves that is hidden in another, but only if we bring that part back can the relationship survive. Otherwise, a loved one becomes an enemy, someone who disappointed us, someone who changed, someone who took something from us. But this is not true. They didn't take anything away, they just stopped carrying what had always been ours. This is the heartache of love, and its release, because the moment we no longer demand that they fulfill the dream, we become free. We can love them for who they are, and this is sacred. Jung called it the sacred marriage, not of man and woman, but of opposites within oneself. When the masculine and feminine within are reconciled, when the shadow is integrated, when the inner conflict ceases, and a new center emerges, self. From this place, love is no longer a necessity, it is a resonance, it is two flames that do not merge, but burn side by side. And here something ancient awakens, a form of love that doesn't demand, does not own, it doesn't fall apart when left unanswered, it just is. Modern neuroscience supports this process. Studies show that long-term love changes brain activity. The areas activated by early infatuation, full of dopamine and anticipation, are replaced by areas associated with connection, empathy, and trust. The peaks are lower, but the depth is greater. Love becomes a slow frequency, a sacred rhythm, not a storm, but a tide. But this love is deserved, not through pleasing or playing a role, but through presence, because you stay when the mask falls, because you listen when the silence hurts, because you see the other not as a fantasy, but as a soul on its own path. And this, Jung said, is true union, not a fusion, not a codependency, but two whole beings meeting on the edge of mystery. It's not easy. The temptation to return to projection is always there. But every time we resist, we become more whole, we become what we sought in them. And then perhaps, we no longer fall into love, we rise into it. We are no longer looking for the one, we become one. And when two ones meet, they do not absorb each other, they create. In the final installment, we explore what it means to become whole through relationships, how love reveals our spiritual path, and why the most intimate union begins with solitude. The paradox deepens, the light dims, but inside, something begins to glow, not another, not a dream, but the self finally, completely, seen. What if the deepest purpose of love is to bring us back to ourselves, not to make us comfortable, not to give us eternal ecstasy, but to awaken us, to expose the cracks, to show us again and again who we are beneath the layers of longing, illusion, fear. We know now, love is not the tender story we were told. It is an initiation, it is fire, it burns away falsehood, it melts away masks, and when he does his work, if we survive his storms, he leaves something behind, something quieter than passion, more sacred than desire. He leaves the presence. To love consciously means to know, you are not my missing part, you are not here to save me, to complete me, to fix me. You are here as a soul, on your path, that intersects with mine, for a certain time, maybe for a moment, maybe for a lifetime, but not to erase my loneliness, only to walk alongside it. That's what most people fear, that love can't fill the void, and yet that's the beauty of it. Jung spoke of the self, the wholeness of our psyche, the center that is not the ego, but the essence. The self can only emerge when the opposites within us are integrated, light and shadow, masculine and feminine, rage and tenderness, chaos and clarity. Love is one of the crucibles in which this integration occurs, if we allow it, but few people allow it. Most demand that love validate them, reflect their worth, obey their story, and so love becomes war, negotiations, retreat, punishment, a theater of unmet needs. But this is not love, this is projection, desperate clinging. To stop projecting is to experience the devastating silence of truth, that I don't deserve your attention, that you don't exist to reflect my kindness, that you're not an extension of my fantasy, you are your own secret. And that's scary, because if I let go of the illusion, I must face loneliness, I must meet the child who was never fully seen, I must mourn the father or mother who could not love, I must admit that what I sought in every kiss, every look, every fight, was not you, it was me, the part of me that I cast out, the part of me that I gave away, the part of me that I hoped you would carry. This is the sacred sorrow in the heart of love, and yet as we go through this grief, something changes. Silence is no longer empty, emptiness becomes a womb. We begin to feel not like fragments, but like something whole, despite the scars. From this place, we don't need love, we choose it, and when two whole beings choose each other, the energy is unlike any other we have known. No temptation, no manipulation, no demand, there is space. Space to speak of the unspeakable, to hold the unbearable, to let the other be the other, to trust that love doesn't mean sameness, it means testimony. It means I will not abandon myself to hold you, and I will not abandon you to hold myself. It means I see you not as an answer, but as a presence, not as a role, but as a soul. This is love as awareness. Jung called this individuation through relationship, the dance between closeness and distance, between surrender and sovereignty, between mystery and reflection. Not all unions can survive this dance. Some are too tangled, too wounded, too unaware, and that is not failure. It is simply part of the journey. Every relationship, even broken ones, teaches us something about self. Some teach us how to abandon ourselves, others mitches, how we fear our own power, and some rare ones show us the face of God, not because the other is divine, but because we are finally ready to see. In this way, relationships become a spiritual practice, not a fantasy of perfect compatibility, but a ground for transformation, a living altar, where the ego burns, and the soul emerges. Modern neuroscience also hints at this. Long-term intimacy, when based on authenticity and emotional safety, activates areas of the brain associated with regulation, trust, and well-being. We become calmer, clearer, more resilient, not because the other person saves us, but because they see us. Being seen is the new salvation, but this only works if both are awake, if both are willing to sit in the fire, to name their patterns, to acknowledge their projections, to speak from the wound, not the weapon. It's not easy, it's the hardest thing we'll ever do, to love without armor, to stay without stories, to listen without protection, but it is also the most liberating, because suddenly love is not a strategy, it is not a game of power, it is not a prize to be won, or a loss to be mourned. This is a state of being. It flows through us, not to one person, but to life itself, and then we understand, we were never looking for a person, we were looking for a state, a remembrance, a return home. The paradox of love is this: it begins with illusion, it matures through disappointment, it becomes truth only after death, the death of fantasy, the death of ego, the death of who we thought we were, and in these sacred ashes, something eternal stirs. Call it soul, call it self, call it love with a capital letter. It is not limited by bodies, titles, oaths or time. It's what remains when everything else burns down. If you loved, really loved, then you died, but you were also born again, and that, Carl Jung would say, has been the goal all along. Love, ultimately, it's the same question we ask through every whisper, every poem, every broken heart. What is this power that binds and breaks us, heals and devastates us? We have walked with Jung through the labyrinth of union and projection. We have seen love as a mirror, as a wound, as fire. But to understand its full dimension, we must step back and look at the mountain from afar. We must compare Jung's vision with the voices of other great philosophers and sages, and perhaps in this way, we will see what love really is, and why it hurts so much. Let's start not with words, but with silence. The silence that comes when a person realizes, I thought I loved you, but I was looking for a part of myself through you. Carl Jung's view of love is radically inward-looking. Love is not an escape from oneself, but a return to oneself. He believed that the beloved awakens the unconscious in us, that our passion, our longing, our confusion, are all a dialogue between the ego and the self, which takes place through another person. In Jungian thought, a loved one is not just a person, but a symbol, an archetype, a container for all that we have rejected. We love someone not because of who they are, but because of what they represent in our psychic structure. Now compare this to Plato, who in the Symposium described love eros as a divine madness, the desire for the very form of beauty. Plato saw love as a ladder. We begin with the love of individual bodies, then minds, then ideals, and finally move from the personal to the divine. For Plato, love rises upward. For Jung it descends downward, into the shadow, into the unconscious, into the forgotten chambers of the soul. Two different directions, but a similar insight. Love is not about the other, it is about what the other awakens in us. From this we begin to see the tragedy of modern love. We are taught to seek comfort, compatibility, validation. We swipe in search of perfection. We measure value by attention and approval. But these are only shadows of love, not its essence. As Nietzsche wrote, there is always a little madness in love, but there is always a little reason in madness. Nietzsche, like Jung, distrusted the tame love of society. He warned that romantic ideals often served as masks for power, for possession, for the ego. Love for Nietzsche could be either the highest expression of the will, or its greatest betrayal. He saw love as a test of freedom, not a fusion. The question is not, do you love me, but can you love me without possessing me? Thus Nietzsche and Jung shake hands in the fire. Love for both is not the loss of oneself in another, but the finding of oneself through the mirror of another. And what about Erich Fromm, whose The Art of Loving argued that love is not a feeling but a skill, a discipline, a practice of maturity? Fromm believed that love is not about falling, but about standing in presence, care, knowledge, respect. Here Jung differs. For Jung, love begins with a fall, with projection, with madness, with chaos. But like Fromm, he believed that true love requires inner work, the painful integration of the shadow, the slow awakening of the soul. Compare this also with Lacan, the psychoanalyst, who ominously stated, "Love is giving something you don't have to someone who doesn't want it." For Lacan, love is a fundamental misunderstanding, an ultimate projection, a dance of desire, built not around who the other is, but around what we lack. This echoes Jung's idea that we fall in love with our anima, our animus, rather than with a real person. But where Lacan ends with grim irony, Jung offers transformation. Yes, love begins with illusion, but it can end with wholeness, if we are brave enough to withdraw our projections, and do the inner alchemy. This is Jung's uniqueness. He doesn't condemn projection, he honors it. It is the way the soul calls itself home. In this Jung is closest to the mystics, to Rumi, who wrote, "Your task is not to look for love, but only to seek and find all the barriers within yourself that you have built against it." Jung would nod, because for him love is never a destination. It is a process, one that begins in fire and ends in freedom. The beloved is then not our savior, but our initiator. It stirs the deep waters, it evokes sleep, it awakens the wound, and if we dare it will help us discover the self beneath all the masks we have worn. But it takes courage, for to love truly, says Jung, is to risk seeing clearly, and yet choose to stay. It is to see not only the other's imperfections, but also one's own. To feel the wound of abandonment flare up, and not blame them. To want to control, but choose to trust. To want to escape, but choose to stay. It's not romantic, it's sacred. So where does that leave us? Jung would say with a task, to integrate the anima, to face the animus, to return the shadow, to become whole, not so that we may be loved, but so that we may love without distortion. This is what he called sacred marriage, conjunctio, not just between two people, but between our inner opposites. And if this sacred union happens within, then any love on the outside becomes a bonus, a reflection, not a necessity. Love then is not a grasping, not a hunger, not a completion. This is recognition, testimony, liberation. What if the other one leaves? Then they fulfilled their purpose. They gave us a mirror. They showed us the face of our soul, and we bow not with bitterness, but with gratitude. This is what makes Jung's view of love radical. It's not romantic, it's not moralistic, it's archetypal, transformational, alchemical. Love is not the end of a fairy tale, it is the beginning of individuation, and that's why it hurts, because it matters, because it asks everything of us, and in return, he gives not another person but a deeper self. So love, not to find peace, but to lose what keeps you from it. Love, not to be saved, but to see what else is sleeping inside you. Love, not to fill the void, but to sit next to it, knit together in silence. And when the fire goes out, when the projections fall, when the storm subsides, you will look at them, and they will look at you. And if the work was done, you will see this, not a fantasy, not a shadow, and the soul, and that will be enough.